I think if you're asking me if they've applied them consistently, I believe they have. If you're asking me if it's right, I believe it's not. And those are two very different things because the policy is being defined by a team that's not sitting in India. Repeated pleas on our end over the last year, we've had at least 4 or 5 takedown notices. And every time it goes, our request for a hearing goes into a sinkhole. We've had one from Apple in the past, and we got a response from their policy team within 48 hours. There's a huge difference. The reason it's relevant, that the right or wrong of it is relevant, is that they are a natural monopoly here. Monopolies, especially natural monopolies, are not evil. It just means that they have the best OS or the right OS match for a market like ours. But it does mean that there needs to be a redressal mechanism where they respond. I don't think borders matter, by the way. Even if they responded from the US or UK or wherever, that'd be fine. I think the second question is, can the policy of a natural monopoly prevail over the law of the land? Now, this is where it gets very tricky. Normally, any company can say, these are my house rules, and that's fair. But when you reach a 95% plus monopoly situation, what is the rules of engagement in the market you play in? And I think this is where our law is falling short, our CCI is falling short. By the way, I think globally, governments are realizing that they're falling short because we've always very narrowly defined matters of antitrust. Search is different, ads are different, gaming is different, OS is different, Play Store is different. No, they're not, because they're leveraging that exact same ecosystem to compete against Paytm or compete against PhonePe all day long. And in my mind, they're breaking all rules of fair play in that one. And I think that's where it becomes very important to understand, does does an Indian startup have the ability to go to court and say, you've allowed it, but the 98% market owner that basically is the gateway to the internet is saying no, and we have no redressal mechanism. I think that's where it becomes tricky. There's no right or wrong. It's a very interesting sort of technology without borders and local law impasse, right?
But Sameer, would you have done what Paytm tried to do in terms of advertising their game on the app or using cashback as a means of reward? Because there are reports that you could play these games using the cashback, and you could also plow the winnings that you earn on the fantasy game back as cashback into the app. Are these workarounds that a PhonePe would have done, which Paytm tried to do and then they got pulled down from the Play Store, among the other reasons?
I won't speak to what we would not have done if we were in gaming. Uh, I think what they've done is consistent with, like, using cashback to promote an application or a category is consistent with anything that is happening across every category. That's very normal consumer behavior. I don't think the cashback, by the way, is why they were delisted. My gut says I think they've misinterpreted that. My gut says it is still about the joint ownership and surrogate marketing. And I remember because I think in 2018 or maybe early 19, Team 11 and MPL and others had also launched their apps on Play Store, which were only cash-in apps. And they were diverting traffic into the APK. And they were pulled down, if I remember correctly. So that clause about not allowing traffic to go from one application to another gaming application, which is off the Play Store, I think came in at that time. So I think some of this is bound to happen because if an entire category that's really exploding, I mean, you look at IPL, most of the advertisers are either gaming or education, right? Now, it's a tricky one if people who are spending hundreds of millions of dollars marketing can't list on the Play Store, which is the medium for downloads. How do you drive traffic with your main app? They are going to cross promote. Would we do it? Perhaps not at the risk of getting taken down just because we've experienced the threats before. But is it a good fight to fight? For a change, I might actually align. I think this is a good fight to fight.
Okay, good fight to fight. That's an important point, Sameer. So let me ask you, have you reached out to Vijay, or has Vijay Shekhar Sharma reached out to you after this issue? Can we see founders banding together against this monopoly of Google and perhaps ask for a more fair way in which they set these rules and also enforce these rules? Have these conversations started happening between founders of some of the biggest payment companies, payment apps in India?
Definitely no conversation between Vijay or I on this one, and I'm assuming he's been tied up anyway. Uh, no, I think first port of call will be talking to the folks we know at Google, right? I'm sure that they were also pretty embarrassed with how much hoopla this got. Um, I think what we need to understand is where are they going to land on how much differentiation they're going to allow themselves versus others on the platform. I'll give you classic examples, right? And this was at the Senate hearing recently in the US also that they got hauled up. They went after retargeting for all the advertisers, and that includes all the Indian advertisers, and they banned it. Yet Chrome with a billion users allows Google access to all the retargeting data and capabilities they need. That's a problem. Uh, for years, you could not advertise on any Google brand name. I could not advertise against GPay or Google Pay, but every single PhonePe user or Paytm user sees a download GPay app on Play Store every single time. And it's like left pocket, right pocket economics. Now I have to spend on my brand name, which should be my trademark, and protect my downloads when people search for my brand name. So the odds are just very heavily stacked against us. I think that's the conversation in the ecosystem. How do we create an alternative? But that is, I don't think that's a Google is evil problem. That's just a natural monopoly problem. Same will hold true with search. We have to figure out how do we make it so that their sheer size does not discourage people from creating new OSs. We have really good OSs in India. Indus OS is one I can think of. We have really good mappings products like Map My India. But how do we as an ecosystem shape these up? And I think I dare say if we survey the tech community, especially the engineering community, I think there's one underlying problem. People genuinely trust the policy enforcement, good or bad, of these tech juggernauts a little more than government prescribed ownership of applications. And I think that's the other problem we have in India, right? The answer to Google OS is not a government of India owned OS, it's going to be private collaboration. And we'll have to figure out how we actually get there. It won't be just PhonePe or Paytm. Perhaps 10 of us need to get together and create an R&D fund. I don't know.
Right. Sameer, even as we speak, the CCI is also probing an antitrust complaint against Google. This was reported sometime in February this year for the control they have and the dominance they have through their Android OS. Do you think, CCI could be a solution or a legal recourse could be a solution? How do you really see this going forward? Or is the answer, as you say, going to be perhaps an industry collaborative effort and alternative to this natural monopoly, so to speak?
I don't think legal recourse will work here because, as I said, Google is well within its rights as a private company to enforce a policy that's more restricted on the categories that are open. They could tomorrow say we won't allow education apps, and that's still legally allowed. CCI is, I think, where the answer lies, but it needs to reimagine its charter significantly. The problem we've run into, and the reason we've never approached them, is that they look at the definition of category very, very narrowly. So, and their view is you must be in the category and demonstrating monopolistic practices within the category for them to act. The problem is Play Store distribution gives every Google vertical product a huge distribution edge. Where we spend hundreds of millions of dollars, they get it for free. They stack up the rules on the advertising side. I mean, all these things, again, they're getting heard in the US Senate. So CCI then needs to decide what is Google's business? Is it 10 different businesses? Because they will actually not be able to build a case on any one alone. If they look at the composite, then I think there's a very powerful case, right? Can one business be crossed? They're playing house, they're playing dealer, and they've got about 6 of the 8 seats on the poker table now. They're playing everywhere. And I think CCI doesn't look at it that way. So I'm not very hopeful in the current context of how CCI looks at cases. And I think, again, they've never reached out to us. The last I remember engaging was on the Bharat matrimony case, which was ages ago. And even there, to be honest, the penalty came up very short. 500-600 crores may be large in the Indian context. It's a blip on the market domination that Google got in India. So this has to be a class action lawsuit kind of a thing where the rules get changed, but it needs to be done right. You can't punish Google for being a natural monopoly. You just need to demand consistency across category play.